How could something so wrong feel so good? Scott was engaged to Shannon and was very, very, very much in love. They were to be married in the fall, in a little over 6 months, and it would be wonderful. So why the hell was he in bed with Marilyn? Scott couldn't explain it, even to himself. It was like he was bewitched. Shannon was everything he wanted, had always wanted, but it may have been enforced celibacy. Shannon had been adamant about no sex before marriage, and Scott had respected her for her principles, and felt waiting was no big deal. No big ordeal. Besides, he'd be working out of town. No, it hadn't been an ordeal until he met Marilyn. Marilyn Mayhem. It wasn't that Marilyn was better looking than Shannon. She was tall, thin, with olive skin and sharp and sardonic features. And Scott wanted her the moment he first saw her at a colleague's house party. She had looked at him with her dark eyes, flirting with him, daring him, and Scott told himself, if only I was a free man. But he wasn't. Marilyn called him the next night. She said she was in a pub not far from his apartment. Some friends and I are here having a few drinks. Why don't you join us? But Scott found her alone. They went home, she said with an arch smile. And after a few drinks, Scott went home with her. And woke up in a strange bed. Next to him, Marilyn, barely breathing, was sleeping the sleep of the dead. Thus Scott began a strange nocturnal existence. Drinks with Marilyn, either in a bar or at her pad, and then hours of hot, sweaty, lustful sex that went on and on and on and on, until first light began to brighten the bedroom curtains. Scott had never experienced anything like it. It was an urge more than a pleasure, an itch he couldn't stop scratching, until there was nothing left, passion spent, and he found himself slinking home through the shadows. Scott knew it was wrong, that it must stop, and as he slunk home, he swore, he vowed, he promised that this would be the last time, and that he would break it off with Marilyn Mayhem. In truth, Scott was becoming afraid of her. Her passion, lust, whatever, was too white hot, too intense, and he worried she wouldn't let him go. "You're mine, baby, you're mine," she whispered in her husky voice. "I'm never going to let you go. Bet your fiancé won't do what I do for you, what I do to you, and what I'm going to do to you in the end. La petite morte." Scott felt sick that Shannon would find out and give him back his ring. But like an addict, he couldn't stop. He hadn't hit bottom. Yet. Early one morning, Scott took a shortcut under one of the bridges spanning the shallow river which ran through town. And it was there he found the body. It was the corpse of a naked woman, the lean, fish-white body glowing dully in the diffused light. She was young and her body seemed excessively hairy, but the most noticeable thing about her was that she had been decapitated, and the head was gone. Decapitated? But how? Scott couldn't see a wound or any blood. Instead, there was a gaping hole at the end of her neck, where the head should have been. But somehow it appeared natural, not something caused by violence or a knife. Scott observed all this in the short space of several seconds, and then began to quickly move away. Oh, he thought about calling the cops. But how could he explain his presence under the bridge, and why he was out walking the streets in the middle of the night? They might think he had done it, that he was the murderer. So he would have to tell them where he'd been, and then Shannon would find out and dump him. Scott took a frightened look around but didn't see anyone, so he headed for the safe haven of home, forcing himself not to burst into a run. Scott spent the day on pins and needles, waiting for news of the murder to be made public. But no one said a word all day, and there was no mention of it in the media. He didn't call Marilyn or go to her flat that evening. Instead, he sat at home, vodka at hand, and watched an old film noir on TCM. Double Indemnity. Double Indemnity, a bleak film with an overpowering sense of doom. And Scott was oppressed himself by an overpowering sense of doom. And then the phone rang. It was Marilyn. "Are you coming over?" "No, not tonight. I'm tired." "What's wrong?" Nothing. I'm coming over." "Wait!" It was too late. Marilyn had already hung up. Scott had no choice but to go and meet her. He certainly didn't want anyone to see her coming to his apartment. It was one thing to be seen having drinks with her, as most of the people at work were young and single, and often met after hours. But Marilyn coming to his place late at night? That could start tongues wagging. The affair was their secret. Him and Marilyn, a secret. It was a secret. Wasn't it? Wasn't it? He met Marilyn underneath the bridge, where he had found the body early that morning. "Why are you avoiding me?" she demanded. "I wasn't avoiding you. I've been waiting for you all evening." "I was tired. I don't believe you." And so Scott ended up telling her the whole thing about the naked body, the headless body, he had stumbled over as he made his way home. He had to tell someone, had to get it off his mind. "And you say she was naked?" Marilyn said in a mocking tone. "Some people would find that rather hard to believe." "I'm only telling you what I saw," Scott said defensively. "I wasn't hallucinating." "No, I don't think you were hallucinating," Marilyn said quietly. Scott noticed she was looking over his shoulder. So he quickly turned around and the naked woman from the early morning hours was standing right behind him, an amused look on her thin, dark face. "Is that the woman you saw?" Marilyn asked. I don't know," Scott stammered. She, perhaps you would be so kind as to remove your head," Marilyn asked the naked girl. As Scott watched in horrified fascination, the nude woman twisted her head vigorously back and forth, and then, with a gentle pop, it detached, hovering in the night air. "What?" was all Scott could manage to get out. From behind, he heard Marilyn say, "I believe she is what is known as a night floater." Scott turned to confront Marilyn, only to end up staring in horror. For now, she no longer had a head. Or rather, it hovered several inches above the collar of her open shirt, where Scott could see a puckered orifice at the top of her neck, where her head should have been. Where her head actually was floating in midair, a foot above. The two women attacked. Or rather, the two heads attacked. Scott instinctively ducked his own head and took a step backwards, falling into the cold water of the shallow river. The river was only about 2 feet deep, So Scott should have been fine. All he needed to do was stand up. But he'd hit the back of his head on a rock as he fell and was knocked unconscious. And so he drowned. But there's always a silver lining, I suppose. Shannon never did find out he'd cheated on her.